Good morning, Dawg Nation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. Hope you had a great Christmas and hope you are ready for a big week for us heading towards Thursday, game day for Georgia against Ole Miss. We're actually recording this early Monday morning. We are getting on the way to New Orleans today. We'll be there. The Georgia Bulldogs themselves, more importantly, will be there later on this evening. We'll have live coverage of their arrival to Louis Armstrong Airport in New Orleans. And after that, it is just on all week long. I tell you, man, this is my favorite time of year with these big games, these big moments. You can just look around anywhere where college football is discussed, and you really realize that Georgia's part of the main attraction right now, and that is such a fun feeling. So we're going to do our best to cover it. I will be honest, we're going to have a quick show today because we got to get to NOLA and get ready for all of this, including a huge day tomorrow. Tomorrow's media day. Oh, my gosh, it's like this wild scene, and it'll be an absolute chaotic nightmare on air, but we'll have fun bringing as much of that as we can to you tomorrow. Going to be a great time. Kaylee Mansell going to pop in and join us for a couple of minutes today. She and I were together at Georgia practice on Saturday, and I think that she's really good about talking about the pageantry of everything that's about to go down in New Orleans. So we'll cover all of that as it's SEC versus SEC in a city that knows the SEC very well for the right to move on to the semifinals and maybe a trip to the Fiesta Bowl after that. So incredible stuff. We are all over it, including here off the top. I think one word that has defined Georgia in 2025, and if this word can remain as relevant in the future upcoming days as it has for the previous months, the Georgia Bulldogs could be in a pretty good position as we head towards this run in the college football playoff. We'll talk about that off the top today. Also, a little bit of an injury update here coming too on a couple of names of note for Georgia. It is all on the way. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. And it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Great job once again by our Cody Chaffins there. Rare look at Georgia practice on Saturday. Tremendous video from Cody on that. You can go to our DawgNation YouTube page, see even more of that. The Georgia Bulldogs getting ready for Ole Miss, finishing off their prep work in Athens yesterday. They are on their way to New Orleans today. We are too. Total confession off the top. We are pre-recording this early on a Monday morning because we all got to get to New Orleans. Going to be ready for the team to arrive at 5 p.m. today and then ready for all of the festivities starting tomorrow. DawgNation Daily tomorrow is going to be a very different experience. This is going to be mass total chaos. We're going to do media day where all the coaches, all the players in one big room, and we're going to walk around and talk to as many of them as we can over the course of our time there. There's usually a few surprises in the building too that we get a chance to maybe catch up with. So it'll be wild. It'll be chaos. It'll just barely be containable. But you know what? I will tell you, I really live for weeks like this. I really do. I love my job every single day, but there are just a couple of weeks out of the year, if you're lucky enough, that just feel even bigger than anything else. And this is, I think, one of those weeks where you know that in New Orleans, you're the main attraction, the eyes of the college football world on you and the handful of teams that'll be playing in the quarterfinals, and you can just feel it. You can just feel it. And so I hope that wherever you are this week, whether you're on your way to New Orleans or maybe you got time off from work and you're settled in to enjoy all the coverage, whatever your story is, I hope that you are as locked in as I feel like I am. Because, man, oh, man, I feel very, very, on this other side of Christmas, and I hope you had a great Christmas, on this other side of Christmas, I just feel really locked in right now, and I'm trusting that you feel the same way. In fact, let me say this to kind of get us going today, that there is so much coverage out there, and in the coming days, there's just going to be so much, that it's almost, even if you're like me, and many of you are, we're trying to get as much as we can, every press conference, every interview, everything that's, written, whatever. We're just trying to consume it all. It's still hard to get to it all. And I think sometimes I can serve in a good role of saying, hey, make sure you see this or make sure you see that. And not in the, way in which internet people talk, just the sort of shameless self-promotion about everything. Hey, check out this and check out that. There are a few things that I think are especially worth your time. I'll give you an example. On Saturday and Sunday, we had a chance to hear from both Georgia coordinators, Glenn Schumann on Saturday, Mike Bobo yesterday. And I thought that Schumann and Bobo were especially good. We're going to play some clips in a minute from these guys. But just to set us up for a conversation, I thought that Schumann and Bobo were especially good in a way they haven't always been. Total confession. I love Georgia press conferences. I essentially listen and watch them for a living so we can have things to talk about here. But they're not always the most entertaining things. And sometimes in the past, I would say that Bobo and Schumann, a couple of their press conferences, whether it's to kick off a season or, around this time during bowl time or whatever, sometimes they're just not that great. They're kind of bland. They're kind of pointless. When it's over with, you just are left wondering, what was that? What did I really get from that? And sometimes the answer may be nothing. But this weekend from both Schumann and Bobo, I thought we got a real sense of, man, they seem to like what they're doing right now, and they seem to be okay talking about what they like, about what they're doing. And if I'm left to wonder, why is that right now? Is I really think that Georgia is very comfortable with its current identity. I think that Georgia has figured out its identity. I think it fits well with how Georgia thinks of itself. And I think that this is maybe different from what Georgia was in 2024. Which I think last year, if we're being honest, I think that at times maybe Georgia had a difficult time of defining as a team what it was all about. Weirdly, it seemed to capture that in opposition to Texas a couple of times in November, in October in Austin, and then the SEC championship. It seemed to define itself pretty well against that opponent. But in the other games that Georgia played a year ago, boy, it seemed like Georgia at times was just struggling to figure out what it is as a team on the field. How does it talk about itself, off the field? It just felt like that's what last year kind of was, culminating in obviously a disappointing loss in this same venue, Sugar Bowl, the Louisiana Superdome a year ago. But this year, and listen, we don't know how this season's going to end. Georgia could lose to Ole Miss on Thursday. This is not a grand proclamation of it, and this is why Georgia's about to run through every team it plays. No, this is real life, and in real life, outcomes are often difficult to predict. Georgia's remainder of the season, for however long it lasts, it'll also be difficult to predict too. But I am personally quite comfortable in saying, when you watch how comfortable Schumann, Bobo are about talking about Georgia at the moment, I think it's all about the common understanding that this Georgia team has about what its current identity is. So to set us up for that, let me go back to, a few days ago, and a pretty viral clip from Kirby Smart. Coaches generally are pretty good at what I think of as a deadpan, sarcastic sense of humor. I think that Kirby's got that just nailed. And, he was asked a question. I think it was Mike that asked it. He was asked a question about roster management and locking guys down for 2026 and that aspect of all of this while getting ready for the college football playoff. And that gave Kirby the platform to just be like the most Kirby he's ever been about how he wishes that players would think about themselves in a world in which some players are announcing they're transferring. Weirdly, you've got some teams announcing that so-and-so player is not transferring, which is a very different landscape for college football. In light of all of that, here's what Kirby, in the most Kirby way possible, said that he wants his players to announce. And this, I think, gives us an idea of what Georgia's true identity as a team really is. Take a listen to this.
No, I hadn't. I mean, we're focused on this team. I think it would be, remiss to say that we're focused on roster management. We're not focused on it. We're focused on, prep and getting better. And for a while, it's been like intrinsically looking at ourselves and asking each player, did you come here to develop? Did you truly come here to develop? Because if you did, all your buddies are out there right now. Everybody's announcing what they're doing. I'm announcing that I'm going in the portal. I'm announcing that I'm re-signing. How about you announce that you're getting better and you're going to practice and actually do what the 20 and 30 years of college football players did before you, which was practice in December when they're on good teams and get better. Because if you're going to play somewhere else, you know what you need to do? You need to get better. If you're going to play here, you know what you need to do? You need to get better. If you want to go to the National Football League and play, this is your last chance to get better, because they're not going to give you much opportunity. They're going to cut you or keep you based on how you do. They don't get to practice in pads but so many days. So development occurs in December for us, and that's what we've been focused on.
That's not just coach speak, I don't believe. I believe that truly is how Georgia sees itself right now. I think that Georgia this year is very comfortable with that as an identity. And maybe a year ago, they couldn't find that identity because maybe for whatever reason, they either weren't successful in getting better, couldn't establish the commitment to getting better. I'll never know. We weren't in that locker room. We can't say for ourselves. But somehow this year, this group, coaches, players working together, they seem to be really comfortable with that as an identity. We're announcing that we plan on getting better. We admit we are not as good as we need to be, and so therefore we're going to keep striving as a way of achieving that. This is a team that identifies itself. This is a team that defines itself by its desire for continual improvement. It's not just coach speak. It's not just sarcastic banter, smart with reporters. This really is how Georgia defines itself. And I think one of the reasons why the Mike Bobo and Glenn Schumann press conferences on Saturday and Sunday, which you can see at the DawgNation YouTube page, I think one of the reasons why these were good, enjoyable, entertaining, I would say informative press conferences, give you a good check on the vibe that Georgia currently has, is because I think everybody understands what the mission is. Hey, we started off here. We're trying to get to there, getting better along the way. And in fact, I'll give you an example of that, reinforcing what you heard Kirby say 4 or 5 times in a 45-second clip a moment ago. Are you getting better? Are you getting better? Are you committed to this? Do you want to be better? Do you understand the value of improvement? Mike Bobo is much the same way when he spoke to reporters yesterday. He was given a chance if he wanted to spike the football and say, you've been the much maligned Georgia offensive coordinator. You've been the butt of jokes. You've been easy fodder for the Paul Feinbaums of the world, and now you're a Broyles Award finalist. Do you want to spike the football, and do you want to say, hey, it's satisfying to prove all my critics wrong? In the midst of that opportunity yesterday in that conversation, Bobo said, no, as a coach, there is something different for me that's satisfying, and it's maybe not surprising to you that it's also very in line with the theme that Kirby establishes. We're a team that's about getting better. We're coaches committed to pushing our guys to get better. We want players who have an appetite for that improvement. Mike Bobo talked about the same thing yesterday.
No, I mean, it's satisfying to coach a group of kids that we have this year that have come in and gotten better every week, have worked extremely hard. We carry a lot of offense, and we put a lot on them each week, and they come out the right week and prepare. And then, work with a great group of guys on the offensive staff. It's not just me, I'm the one calling the plays, but, I don't go lock myself in a room and come up with the plays that we're going to run. It's a collaborative effort from our staff, and they've done an outstanding job. There's guys that have been coordinators in that room, and James Coley and Brandon Streeter. There's guys that have been in the NFL, and Coach John Lilly and Phil Rosher. There's guys I've worked with before, and Coach Searles and Coach Hartley, and there's, guys that have sat in the chair being a coordinator, and nobody has an ego in there. Everybody's got a lot of suggestions, but at the end of the day, we decide what we're going to run, and they do a great job coaching it. The players do a great job executing it. So, that part's, satisfying that I work with a great group of guys and have unbelievable kids to coach. And, we had an outstanding season to this point, but, we got to finish, and that's our mindset right now.
Look, the Georgia coaches and players are proud men, and sometimes that pride, which we all have, will prevent you from admitting certain things. I don't know that Georgia will ever fully admit the fact that after last year's performance in 2024, they needed improvement. Georgia was not great offensively last season. They needed to get better. But when you hear the pride of performance that comes out there of, boy, this is a group of players that have been committing, getting better each week, and you see the results, when you hear how satisfied Georgia is with the improvement they've already shown, I think that gives you an idea that they knew a year ago that was not Georgia at its best. Maybe on either side of the ball, it was not Georgia at its best. And over the course of this season, we have seen Georgia working to get there. If there was then a single word that I think defines Georgia this season, it is improvement. Week to week, game to game, month over month, certainly year over year. It's improvement that is the single word that probably defines Georgia, and the striving for that improvement, the insatiable appetite for that improvement has been the identity of Georgia as a team. Not just an offense, but defense as well, because within the season, the improvement on defense has been the most dramatic, where, my gosh, we've talked about before the notion of game control. It seems like on the defense side of the ball, there were a lot of games earlier this year where Georgia wasn't controlling games very much, was just holding on for a wild ride against Tennessee, first half, even against Auburn. The Ole Miss game, my gosh, what a heart-stopping deal that was, where, I mean, for a minute, it didn't seem like Georgia was going to get a stop at all, and then finally got big stops when it needed to, and has used that to get better as from there to the point where shutting down Alabama, putting Tech in handcuffs, really playing good defense now to end the season. And once again, with the notion of improvement being the theme for Georgia, when Glenn Schumann spoke to reporters on Saturday, he was also more than happy to, leaning into this team's current identity, talking about how Georgia on that side of the ball, defense, has gotten better from the beginning of the season to the point where it is now. This is Glenn Schumann.
I just think there's a lot of guys that have grown up over the course of the year. We knew that would be the case. And you get, as the more you play, the more confidence you gain. There's also an element too that as we spend time together, the more you see people in live scenarios, you see what they're doing well or what they're getting better at, and what you need to work on. And so you kind of grow together in that way. And so I think I think the group as a whole has gained a lot of confidence. I think that's helped. And we went in every Monday of the season, no matter what it was, and said there's 2 goals for the week. We got to get better, and we got to find a way to win. As long as we do those 2 things all year long, we'll be where we need to be at the end of the year.
So great stuff there from Glenn Schumann. Later on in that same press conference, talked even more about just that week-to-week improvement, what Georgia's been able to do, how it's continued to become the unit that it takes with it against Ole Miss on Thursday that we feel like can be far different than the one was before. More from Glenn Schumann on that.
We knew we had guys that had ability that had not played a whole bunch, and we knew that there was going to be a process of getting better throughout the course of the year, which it doesn't matter if you have a team full of seniors or a team full of freshmen. You better develop your roster and grow so that when you're at your best, when your best is needed. I think there's an element to, you can look back on any of those games and we do a post-game write-up, no matter what the final score was, of, hey, what would we have game planned differently? How would we have used our players differently? And then you kind of execute that plan moving forward. So it's not anything different than we've done in the past. It just, obviously there were a couple of games there that, were a half game, whatever it was, that we did not perform to the expectations. But credit to the guys, like their growth and their level of confidence and their focus on the task at hand. Like the guys in the room came to work every day, not worrying about any outside noise, not worried about, hey, what it said statistically. And they trusted that if we continued to go through our process the way that it's been proven here, that it works, that it would sort itself out in the end.
And sorting itself out so far is what it has done, but we haven't reached the end yet. And so let's wrap up this conversation this way. That if the word that's defined Georgia this year is improvement, I believe it is, and if the comfort these Georgia coaches show in speaking about this team right now is related to the understanding that everybody seems to have about Georgia's identity, I think it's important that as you move towards Thursday and what we hope 2 more games for Georgia after that Georgia continues to seek this same level of improvement. Because, look, if you compare Georgia to the other teams that are still playing the college football playoff, Georgia would at least be a point spread underdog to Ohio State, probably, and I don't know, maybe Indiana too, although that's a little bit hard to imagine. But the point is, Georgia would not be a point spread favorite over every team in this college football playoff. So therefore, it just stands to reason that if Georgia is going to win the national championship, then it's got to find more improvement before the season's done, the same way it has been all year long. And I think when you listen to these Georgia coaches talk, they've got confidence that this team wants that for itself, that this team will continue to seek after that. And going back to New Orleans, a place where they obviously lost a year ago, just I think serves as a reminder of we don't want to feel the way leaving NOLA that we did a year ago. And we don't want to have to watch the semifinals and the national championship on television, watching somebody else do what we've grown accustomed to seeing Georgia get a chance to do. This is a team that I think is hungry for achievement, but it knows the pathway to get that achievement is the improvement that it's been going through all season long. That's what I think this team is about. That's what it's been about thus far. And if it can find a way to keep that going, it can beat Ole Miss on Thursday and maybe a couple of more wins even after that. This could be a fun college ball playoff. And it begins for the Dawgs in New Orleans today. And we will be there later on. Team arrival. We'll have that for you on video this evening. And then tomorrow, Media Day coverage. We are all over everything from New Orleans, Georgia, Ole Miss coming up in the Sugar Bowl. We can't wait for that. Happy to have you with us on our program today, by the way. And a big thanks to our friends at Pella Window and Door of Georgia who make it all possible. They're also a big part of our postseason coverage, too, which is always a lot of fun. And when you're moving towards a brand new year, which we are right on the doorstep of, thinking about some big projects here for 2026 is a fun thing to consider. And I think for you, as you're thinking about home improvement and making your home as good as it can be, taking the best possible care of it you can, I really think upgrading your windows is one of those things you should possibly consider. If you're like me, you probably don't think about windows as much as you could. It's one of those things, they're transparent, you see through them, so therefore you don't necessarily think about them. You just think about what's on the other side of those windows when you look out and see your landscape or your yard or your neighbor's house, whatever else. But windows are really one of the most important things for your home because it impacts the comfort that you feel. Like a lot of people, I watched It's a Wonderful Life a bunch over the course of the Christmas season, and they talk about the old house they live in being a drafty house. You don't want to live in a drafty house. You don't want to have air coming in. You're not really quite so sure where this is, and you've got one part of your house feels one way, another part feels another way. That's not what you want. When you upgrade to Pella windows, you're going to get rid of all of that. You're going to have the comfort you seek consistently all across your house and the energy that you're paying so much for, because after a really warm and pleasant few days around Christmas, it's about to be, as winter would expect to be, pretty cold here in the coming days. So keep the energy you pay for on the inside where it's supposed to be. Keep that cold, windy air on the outside where it's supposed to be. You can check out our friends online at Pella Window and Door of Georgia for more on this. PellaGA.com/DawgNation. That's PellaGA.com/DawgNation. You can also give them a call, 678-638-1429. That's 678-638-1429. Pella Window and Door of Georgia, always going beyond and giving you great savings right now, too. How about 10% off your Pella project and no interest if paid in full within 12 months? No promo payments due as well. So all of that is yours today. Think about the opportunity that exists for you. Save on your energy bills, improve your curb appeal, keep the noise on the outside of your house. You got busy roads near you. The Pella window is going to knock down that noise and keep that from disrupting the peace you have inside your house. You want perfect tranquility. Our friends at Pella Window and Door of Georgia can provide that for you inside your home when you upgrade those windows to Pella today. All right, fun for us. John Stinchcomb, by the way, programming note. John's going to be in New Orleans. I think we're going to catch up with John maybe on Wednesday, because we're recording this early in the Monday morning. I did not want to disturb John's rest. So we'll catch up with John, I think on Wednesday probably. Kaylee Mansell, who was with me at Georgia practice on Saturday, she's going to be with us in a minute. We'll talk a little bit about what we saw there, including a very funny story of a very specific Kirby Smart moment. We'll get to that here coming up in a way that only Kirby could at practice on Saturday. We'll have some fun with that in just a bit. Prior to that, though, let's go around the doghouse today, poured by our friends at Dr. Pepper. And, of course, I love going to the college football playoff because the Dr. Pepper's all over the place. You're going to see that Dr. Pepper logo prominently displayed all around New Orleans this week, getting ready for the Sugar Bowl. So we're happy to have them around the doghouse here today. Now, speaking of Georgia practice, we were there on Saturday. One of the interesting notes that came out was we got a chance to see Colbie Young in action. And I thought our Cody Chaffins had some great video of this. To my eyes, not being a former wide receiver or a medical professional, when we're watching Colbie here, to me, and if you're on video, you obviously see this. If you're listening radio podcast, you can go to our DawgNation social channels. You can see this for yourself. To me, it looks like Colbie's running pretty well here. And I would say that while I think it's a great video, and I think it's certainly a hopeful sign, I would still stop short of saying, for me personally, this proves it. He's ready to go. He's going to be able to play for Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. I think it proves that he's going to try. I do. And it would lead me to believe that Colbie might be ready, if Georgia can win and move on toward the college football playoff, that he could be a real valuable asset to the Georgia offense eventually in this. I think that's probably true. But this video alone, as good as it is, does not convince me that he's definitely playing, although he's probably running right there. I'm talking about short line stuff, cutting, turning. He's probably doing a little bit more of that than I maybe would have expected him to do. It's at least encouraging, if not confirming. As far as his status, and even a guy like Ethan Barbour, who are also led to believe, we saw him some on Saturday, he could be coming back. Here around the doghouse, poured by Dr. Pepper, Mike Bobo updated on some of those injuries this week. This is yesterday. Bobo on primarily the subject of Colbie Young, but also Ethan Barbour too.
Well, you got two big bodies. I know Ethan's only a freshman, but he was playing for us early in the season and had the terrible injury and the setback. But he's worked extremely hard, to get back and have a chance to possibly play. We're still day to day, but he's a guy that can play both positions, Y and F. He's a guy that can be an inline guy and be able to flex out. So his versatility, number one. He's a very, very smart football player. Even when he was out, he was non-weight bearing, and he was always around. He's always paying attention. And the same thing for Colbie is another heartbreaking injury for him. He thought he was done for the year, but he's worked his way back. But he was a big body, right, that was making plays for us on the perimeter, not just 50-50 balls. He was catching the ball, explosive after the catch. He was an extremely physical blocker. I talked about him, I think, in the preseason, or maybe the spring, last time I talked to y'all about how he was leading that room. And he continued to do that when he was out. So if we could get those two guys back and hopefully for this game, it's just two more weapons, that are at our offense's disposal and Gunner's disposal.
So let me say this really quickly, 2 points on what Bobo just said there. He calls it two more weapons, and I think that's really true, and I'll give you a really simple way to think about this. So let's say that Barbour comes back. We're led to believe he might be. He's obviously a really good tight end, played wide receiver last year for his high school team, but he's a good, valuable tight end for Georgia. But prior to his injury, Barbour's lining up at fullback at times for Georgia. And we saw Georgia utilize that with Roderick Robinson, got a touchdown in the SEC championship game. I think that the potential that Barbour could return and occupy a little bit of a role that he occupied before he went out to injury, I think that gives Pete Golding a lot to think about, because this is just football 101, right? You don't have to be ball knower to necessarily understand this. If I put that extra body in the box for my run game, then if I'm a defense, I got to crowd another hat in there to keep from just getting mauled and having them just run all over me. Well, guess what? The NFL has been doing this for forever. When you put the big personnel, kind of the heavy set type look with your offense, suddenly it becomes a lot easier to throw the ball because there's a lot more lanes to throw to, because you got guys crowding up to help stop the run and compete with the numbers that Georgia's going to create for itself if it does utilize the fullback. And so when you put fullback in the game, that's not just 3 yards in the cloud of dust. That's an opportunity for exploiting man coverage or just having wider lanes to throw to. You can create all kinds of opportunities for yourself offensively just by putting the fullback in the game. It's one of the reasons why I've always liked fullbacks and like that element of offense for a team that wants to use it. In the NFL, we still see that a lot more than we do, certainly in college football. So the fact that Barbour could come back and maybe play some of the role that he played prior to injury, that could be really, really valuable for Georgia. And if nothing else, it just gives Golding something else to think about. And sometimes you're winning with your opponent just forcing them to think about something, forcing them to prepare for something. It's a contingency they must consider. And thinking about that means they're not thinking about something else, which gives Georgia a chance to potentially win that chess match. And when it comes to Colbie Young, this is a guy that's been pretty hurt. And I think even with kind of a nice-looking video of him in practice, I think he's probably still hurt. I really do. Not too hurt to play necessarily, but hurt nonetheless. However, what if I told you, just modest, not very ambitious at all, what if I told you before this season's done, Colbie could get even one more catch? That's by far and away a lot more than I thought we'd get from Colbie Young. I mean, I thought he was done when he got hurt earlier this year. I think most people did. Kirby Smart probably did too. What if it was just one more catch? Because think about what a Colbie Young catch typically is. I mean, close your eyes and picture Colbie Young getting a catch. What kind of catch is that usually? It's usually 3rd and 8, converting, moving the chains. It's a touchdown. Colbie has a tendency to only catch big balls, only catch, balls in moments when you really, really need to move the sticks, or when you really need to convert, when you really need points, red zone weapon. That's what Colbie Young seems to be. So one more catch this season, and maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's a lot more than that. But one more catch from Colbie Young this season, I think that's the kind of thing that could really change the fortunes for Georgia perhaps this year. So positive talk there on the injury front when it comes to maybe Young will come back. Maybe it's Thursday. Maybe it's a taste of him on Thursday. And if Georgia can win, a lot more after that. But I think we'll see Colbie Young at some point this year, assuming that Georgia can keep winning at the very least. And I think that Barbour's return, I think, just gives Georgia an extra wrinkle to its offense that's going to force Ole Miss and whoever else Georgia plays to consider how they might choose to use that weaponry within the Mike Bobo offense. Now, on the flip side of that, just trying to talk to people who know some people who know some people who know some people, and the fact that, to my eyes, we did not see him on Saturday, at least not that I noticed. I don't have as positive an appraisal about the Gabe Harris situation right now. Seems likely to me that Harris won't play against Ole Miss, and I guess if I was a betting man, I would probably put him more in the Drew Bobo category of, I'm not saying that Harris is not going to play again this season. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that I am far more pessimistic about that than I am with the 2 injuries we just mentioned on offense. And in fact, let me let you hear from Glenn Schumann about the assessment of what it could be for Georgia defensively if there is no Gabe Harris. Here is what Glenn Schumann said about that.
Depending on the package, our end and our jack room can be one and the same. How much 4 down we're playing, 3 down, the 3rd down package. So for that, it could be, a Joseph Jonah that plays some in, but there's also, an additional workload with Q and Elo and Chris Jones in terms of jack rolls. And then on 3rd down, we have a bunch of different guys that can rotate as a kind of combo rusher that rushes inside and outside. So it won't necessarily be one guy. Joseph will obviously have to take a bigger role. JJ Haney, Chris Jones, Elo Mendoza. There's other guys out there that are making a lot of progress, young guys. But those guys, what will happen a lot of times is he's had a brunt of a workload, kind of a higher workload. And it might be an extra 7 snaps for this guy, 10 snaps for this guy if he's not available. But Gabe is also working really hard to be back with us. And we'll address that kind of when the report comes out on Monday.
So listen, let me try to sum this up very quickly this way, in that if we say, the word that defines Georgia's improvement, well, I would say that Gabe Harris is the avatar for that improvement. How much better have we seen him get? I think he's playing at a really high level. So you just heard Schumann mention some names, and they're good options. We think that Georgia can provide a replacement for Gabe Harris, but I do think if Harris isn't playing, or if he isn't playing at 100%, I do think it's a pretty big loss for Georgia. I do. And we've had, 3 or 4 former players talk about how they view the notion of turf toe, even though they all acknowledge there are wide ranges of severity for what turf toe can be. They all take it very, very seriously. So just being honest, as someone who tries to watch this as closely as you do, I think that Harris's injury is probably a pretty big factor on Thursday. I think there's a chance he doesn't play. That's at least a guess for me, but we'll see. Obviously, as Glenn Schumann said, as soon as today, you'll start seeing some of these availability reports start to come out, and we'll be following them every step of the way, getting ready for the Sugar Bowl. A couple of key updates on injuries. Georgia on its way to New Orleans, getting ready for a college football playoff matchup against Ole Miss. And that's around the doghouse. It's poured today by our friends at Dr. Pepper. And we told you, we love Dr. Pepper. Going to New Orleans, we're driving there today. That means I'll be drinking plenty of Dr. Pepper as we're rolling down the road, just because it keeps me fueled up, and it's always tasting good too. So I'm all about that. We love Dr. Pepper's presence around the college football playoff as well. So as you're doing your shopping this week to get ready for your own big watch party, got friends coming over, hopefully everything else, stock up on the rich, one-of-a-kind flavor of Dr. Pepper, because there's There's nothing more college football playoff than that. We love having Dr. Pepper as a part of Around the Doghouse here on DawgNation Daily because around here, it's a Pepper thing. We also love having all of you with us too, and my travel companion for today and someone we spent some time together this weekend watching some Georgia practice, getting ready for all the sights and sounds. Pinch hitting for our guy John Stinchcomb today. Let's talk to Kaylee Mansell here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Good to talk to Kaylee Mansell, getting ready to go to New Orleans here in a little bit. Kaylee's on the phone as opposed to being here in our palatial DawgNation World Headquarters studios. I trust this means you'll still be here when the show ends so we can get on the road, though. Is that correct, Miss Mansell?
Look, it's not me that you're waiting on. That's all I'm going to say. But I did wake up early this morning, finished all my packing. I'm ready to go. I feel like a kid on Christmas. I'm excited to get there, excited to see the team. It's like a completely different feeling going to New Orleans this time than it was last year, and I'm sure that you probably feel the same way.
I 100% do. And listen, I do think there's movement within college football for more home games. Yeah, I saw where we talked about this last week. Dan Lanning even said, I think the Texas Tech should be hosting this game as opposed to them playing Orange Bowl, whatever it is they're playing. So there's definitely movement towards more on-campus games. People seem to like that. And I get it. I think that'd be a lot of fun too. But there is something about the pageantry of a big bowl like the Sugar Bowl. I think there are two bowls that really do it very well. Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl. I think they just feel big. They feel historic. There's a tradition there. And I hope that people will tune in later on today, Kaylee, because we'll see Georgia arrive in New Orleans, all the fanfare, the very New Orleans-specific fanfare will take place. And I do think that this is a throwback to what college football has always been. I don't know how much longer stuff like this is going to be in our lives. So I think that you and I both have the mindset of, while this exists, and who knows what the future of the sport looks like, but while this exists, we do want to enjoy it as much as we possibly can, right?
Yeah, and I understand the argument for people wanting more home games, especially in this age where people feel like bowl games outside of these don't really matter, and you want to reap the benefits of having that advantage. But I think the purpose of playing these games away is it's supposed to be a reward, not just for the team itself, but also the fans. You worked so hard. You played such a tough home schedule. You played such a tough away schedule that you get to reap the benefits of playing in a prestigious game like the Sugar Bowl or the Rose Bowl. And I've heard really good things about the Cotton Bowl as well. It's supposed to be something that the players get the chance to look forward to. I worked so hard, so I get to go play this game that's got so much tradition and history, especially when it comes to Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. It's supposed to feel really big, and it's supposed to be something that you genuinely look forward to. So I know people feel a certain way about playing these games at home, but I know with the history between Georgia and the Sugar Bowl, Georgia fans are excited, and I'm sure the players feel that excitement as well.
I think there will be a lot of Ole Miss fans here this week. It's obviously a geographic advantage for them. Oxford a lot closer to New Orleans. This is arguably the biggest game that program has played in the modern era. You'd have to go back to, 1960s to probably think of anything that even comes close, at least I think. So because of that, and maybe they just want to rally around Pete Golding, I do believe that there will be a significant Ole Miss presence in this game. I think a lot of Georgia fans will be there too, but I'm guessing it won't be hard to find the Barbour jackets and the Ole Miss version of prep. Now listen, I got my prep on today too. I'm going to out prep these Ole Miss fans this week. That's my goal. But I don't think Ole Miss fans in New Orleans will probably be very hard to find.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to beat Ole Miss on the field by myself, so the least that I can do for this Georgia program is to beat them outfit-wise all week long. That's my personal goal. But, I actually thought that Notre Dame did a good job of showing up last year. They certainly didn't have the geographical advantage that Ole Miss did, but I also didn't feel like it was that same kind of uproar that we saw between Georgia and Ole Miss fans this year in Athens. So I'm excited to have that full stadium feel type to it of a really good rivalry game. I know it's a rematch, but it's also just cool to think about how that atmosphere is going to be, because I felt like maybe that was something that was lacking in last year's Sugar Bowl. I just don't know if it was Georgia fans going into this game thinking, well, it may not be the same as it was before, and Notre Dame fans, we know how they can be. So I'm excited to feel that same feeling of maybe what we felt in the SEC championship, where you've got to put everything out on the line, because at this point it's do or die. And I think having the fan bases of Ole Miss and Georgia will kind of reflect that feeling. So I'm excited for that opportunity to be able to experience that, because I do feel like maybe some of that was lacking in last year's game.
Before we let you go, we were at Georgia practice on Saturday. I want you to tell the very funny story. I'll set it up and let you tell the story. So we got a chance to watch, 15 minutes, got a chance to show some of that on video, which was a lot of fun. Hopefully people got a kick out of seeing a rare look at Georgia practice. We're getting packed up. We're, going away from the practice field back towards the media area where we're going to, regroup and get ready to shoot some more video. And as we're walking away, we got one of those classic Kirby Smart hot mic moments that we sometimes talk about. A lot of this stuff leaks onto the internet. In this particular case, we didn't record it, obviously, because we're not snitches. But we did get a chance to hear it. Thought it was really funny. So for people who maybe missed that when we talked about it on Saturday, tell folks what we heard from Kirby Smart in very classic Kirby Smart fashion on Saturday.
Well, we are kind of snitching in a way, but it's not like it was some big secret. If you were just standing outside the practice field, you would have heard Kirby Smart come after Zachariah Branch. I don't think I can repeat every single word that he said because we have to keep it PG, but he basically said, hey, man, you haven't done anything this entire practice. You call yourself a leader? Okay. And, it was funny because one thing that you and I had talked about is when we got the chance to watch practice, I felt like Kirby really dialed it down on the microphone for us. So it was really just a matter of right time, right place. We were kind of lingering, packing everything up. So this was probably about 15 minutes after practice. But, in hearing some of those mic'd up moments, it's really the veteran guys that he expects a lot out of that he goes after on the mic. And I'm sure that Zachariah Branch has been in it long enough to understand that. And he obviously has high expectations of him, not just as a player, but also as a leader on the field. So it was one of those moments where you realize that nobody's safe, even if you are the playmaker that's turning plays into touchdowns on the field. Practice is what is important to Kirby Smart, and so he expects that out of Zachariah Branch. So I'm sure that lit a fire underneath him, but I think Zachariah Branch knows at this point you can't take it too personally because that just means that he likes you.
Well, I think it's 100% true what you just said, that no one's safe, because if you pick some rando off the street and gave them a chance to experience that, they would probably think, well, gosh, Zachariah Branch must be a bad player. It must be a bad guy. Must be whatever. But no, he's actually among the very best players. And in addition to that, he is universally praised for being among the very best guys. And nobody works harder at practice than Zachariah Branch does. That's what's been universally understood about Zach ever since he came to Georgia. His brother Zion's very much the same way. But the point that you're making, which I think is 100% true, is even that guy's not safe. That no matter what your reputation is and no matter how well you have built on that reputation while being at Georgia, on the field, at the practice field every single day, as a true leader, Georgia takes very few transfers. The ones that it does take want to be additive to their overall culture. Of course, Branch has been. Even that guy, though, is not safe from getting on the wrong side of the Kirby Smart microphone at a given time, which goes back to what really the theme of this show has been about today, Kaylee, before you joined us, which is that Georgia continual attempt to seek improvement wherever it can find it. And obviously that hard standard that Kirby Smart holds everybody to every single moment is, I would say, certainly an example of that.
Well, I think Zachariah Branch fell victim to something that we all may be guilty of, which is sometimes you just get to be too good at your job. And when you start at the top, there is only one way to go. And I feel like that might be the case for Zachariah, because from the moment he came in, we heard Kirby Smart talk about how good of a practice player that him and Zion were. So, when you're at the top, there's only one way to go. So you got to keep pushing him and pushing him. But, he's adapted into the program really well at a speed than we haven't seen other transfers accomplish at this point. But, it's not supposed to be easy. Those tough practices are what make the games that Georgia plays in look easy because they practice so hard. And we got a really good glimpse of that on Saturday. And so if you haven't watched it, I would encourage you to go back and watch our live practice video where we got to see what felt like real drills in that moment. And you can finally get a glimpse of the physicality and the speed speed that we're always hearing about with Georgia practice. And again, it's always that practice that makes perfect, and I expect to see that same level of physicality and speed from Georgia on Thursday.
Great stuff, Kaylee. Can't wait for the game, and obviously can't wait for everything we're going to have happening in New Orleans here this week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Begins today. Team gets there 5 p.m. Eastern time, something along those lines. We'll see all of that. Huge media day tomorrow. All kinds of live broadcasts breaking in whenever news happens, and just experiencing the pageantry that is Georgia back in the Sugar Bowl. Kaylee, I'm much older than you. I grew up hearing you can't spell sugar without UGA, and we get a chance to prove again this week just how true that is. So I can't wait to enjoy all of it with you, and glad to have you along for the ride, literally and figuratively, here over the course of the next few days.
Well, you just stole my Instagram caption that I was going to have for my picture on Thursday, but that's all right. I'll just have to come up with a new one. With that, I guess I'm going to put my shoes on, head out the door, and I'll see you here in just a few minutes.
Can't wait, Kelly. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Great stuff. We're ready for it. Team gets there today. We'll see the arrival. They're always greeted with the big, the second line band and all the parasols and all of the very specific stuff for New Orleans. Will have all of that. It's always a lot of fun. I truly love it. Listen, I think that New Orleans is a lot of fun. I love the New Orleans food. I've got plenty of stretchy pants and things like that to account for all the gumbo and jambalaya and everything else we'll be consuming here. And most importantly, giving you a chance to see this Georgia team, as Kaylee, I think, accurately said, in a very different spot perhaps with its rival this year compared to where it might have been a year ago. We're really excited about all of that. We'll also get ready for an SEC Through here coming up in a moment. Let me give a shout out before we get there to our friends at Georgia Spa Company. And speaking of big new ideas for the new year, we think this is a great chance for you to maybe take some outdoor living space and really upgrade that. I'm always amazed at how people that just get the most out of their outdoor space. It's almost like you can turn your home into your own. It just feels like a resort. You can really make that happen. And our friends at North Georgia Spa Company want to give you a chance to do that, working with some of the best brands in this particular space, like hot spring spas, caldera spas, endless pools, Talo saunas, so much more. And they've got someone for you that's going to even act as your spa guru to say, okay, here's your space, here's what you might want, really offering you great suggestions of, well, is it a sauna? Is it an outdoor lap pool? Is it a hot tub? And which variety is going to be the perfect fit for your particular space. They're great at that. They've served over 35,000 customers. They've got 4,000 plus 5-star reviews. So you're working with a great company. You can find out more online, georgiaspacompany.com. That is georgiaspacompany.com for more on that. So the SEC will be well represented in the college football playoff coming up. But here for our SEC Through, it's also probably worth looking back on a couple of SEC teams that were in action on Saturday. And the critics of the league coming out, jumping all over this, ready to say, did you see LSU lost to Houston? I guess that means the SEC's not all that much. Or Missouri lost to Virginia. I guess this proves everything but the SEC. I say this all the time. I think that Georgia's the perfect example. If you want to know the unfair standard the SEC is held to, because there are a lot of people out there outside the blueprint of the SEC that would like for the imbalance when it comes to attention and success. There are a lot of people that would love to level that playing field in college football, even if it ultimately means the sport is less popular down here in our part of the world. They would take that trade-off if they could make the sport seem a little bit more even, a little bit more uniform. If they could make it seem a little bit more national, they would do whatever they could, including trying to depress the interest in the SEC if possible. So anytime the SEC loses, but we're going to jump up and say, this proves everything. All the wins in the world prove nothing, but one loss proves everything. And I think it's really interesting to see folks trying to do that this week, especially with like LSU losing to Houston. Keep in mind, LSU has an interim coach who's already announced he's moving on to a different job as soon as this season comes to an end. Who knows who LSU even has playing for them? And suddenly Houston beating LSU is proof of something related to the SEC. I do think it's a big deal for Houston. Houston is very close geographically to Baton Rouge. There are a lot of LSU fans that live in Houston, so for a program that would like to think of itself as being at a higher level, for the program itself, beating LSU is a big deal. I don't dispute that really at all. But for those who want to make this a narrative about the league that the Cougars play in, the Big 12, Houston was one of the better teams in the league this year. LSU fired its coach. LSU, is completely overhauling its program. If you're one of the upper tier teams of the Big 12 and you can't beat an SEC team like this that barely had 11 players to go to the game, that's a huge problem for you. I mean, I think at that point, the fact that it's even treated as a big deal that Houston would beat an LSU team like this gives you an idea of just the out of whack perceptions that I think that people have about, sort of middle to lower tier right now SEC team like LSU in a bowl game. I think that's actually pretty wild. On the flip side of that, I do think that Missouri should have beaten Virginia. And I'm going to hold Missouri to a different standard than I'm going to hold LSU to. LSU has fired its coach. LSU's, moving on. Missouri's Bo Pribble is moving on. They're going to a different direction quarterback. So there's a little bit of changeover for that program like there would be for any program. But they make a big deal about re-signing Eli Drinkwitz to a contract extension. Drinkwitz had done a good job this year. A couple of years ago, they got the big bowl win against Ohio State. That was a big deal, and certainly they wanted to treat that way, and they should have. It's funny, the media seems to not remember that as much as they remember some of these SEC losses, but either way. The point is this is not an SEC team that is as in flux as LSU is. Much like Virginia, spent a lot of the year ranked inside the top 25. So, yeah, Missouri probably should beat Virginia. Probably should. That's not a great performance, I would say, for a Missouri team that wants to build towards an 8-win season this year and keeping some – they've probably had a better track record of success in recent years than you realize. But a great way to keep that going would be a win like this against Virginia. In fact, go back and look a year ago. Disappointment for South Carolina in 2025 may have been foreshadowed by the fact that after a good year last season, they got outplayed in a bowl game against Illinois, and they didn't quite ever, recapture the magic of 2024 with the way they played in 2025. So sometimes, I'm not saying, bowl games are completely unimportant. It would have been nice for Missouri to beat Virginia, I think, for that program. But honestly, LSU at this point in time is like a industrial league team. I mean, it's barely even a college football team. So while Houston has every right to celebrate the win, I don't know that it's going to be much of a narrative from anybody else in terms of what that means about the overall landscape of the SEC. But nonetheless, SEC has started its bowl slate. We'll have more of these games leading into, obviously, the big one with Georgia and Ole Miss coming up on Thursday. Let me also mention one more thing here real quick. Kyle Whittingham is your new Michigan coach. This happens while we were on hiatus for Christmas. It's weird to me. Whittingham now has a better job than he used to have at Utah. Michigan, I believe, has a better coach now than it had with Sharon Moore. And yet, I can't quite join the throngs of people. You're seeing mostly universal support for this move. People seem to think that Michigan has perhaps luck boxed its way into a really good coaching hire. And Whittingham has been a good coach at Utah. But can we be fair about this for a moment? A, Whittingham is not the youngest guy in the world. I believe he's 66. That's a weird, type of thing to roll out to your big boosters and fans. Perhaps Michigan thinks it needs a more buttoned-up image. It definitely does. Maybe Whittingham's able to provide it. But here's the other thing. I mean, we have to be honest about this. For no matter how much Whittingham won while being at Utah, it seemed like Utah was ready for him to go. And, I mean, Whittingham himself even acknowledged that he wasn't necessarily retiring. He was just, as he said, entering the transfer portal, open to take another job, and then the Michigan job fell right in his lap. So I don't know that I treat this as good a hire for Michigan as some other folks are going to. In fact, I feel like at best this is a short-term proposition. And maybe just cleaning up some of the nastiness and some of the embarrassment, maybe that's enough for right now. But this is a Michigan team that's got Bryce Underwood on the roster. You would think they are ready to win now. And I just don't know that Whittingham at this stage of his career feels like the kind of force of energy that's going to come in and provide that. I don't think it's going to be a disaster necessarily. But given the arms race at the top of the Big Ten, where Michigan won a national championship, last year Ohio State won a national championship, I don't know that hiring Whittingham allows you to keep pace with that. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I feel like I'm a little bit of a contrarian on the prevailing wisdom right now that, Michigan knocked it out of the park. Well, if that's the case, how come Utah didn't want him anymore? Utah is obviously an inferior job to the Wolverines. Either way, that's the move there. A big domino falling in this late stage of the coaching carousel, and will make that your SEC through. And as we wrap up here today, Saw my good friend Faraday on social media this week. Faraday is a great part of our Dog Nation team, and much like me, she's also a big fan of Mercier Orchard's hard cider. I saw this from Faraday. We'll show it to you. She says, hey, right now it's 74 degrees in December. It's a perfect day to enjoy some Mercier Orchard's hard cider, just peachy. Watching some bowl games, looking forward obviously to the Sugar Bowl. So she's having a good time doing that. And, of course, it's always nice to see other folks in our audience doing the same thing. Smith DK on X writes in to say, I just picked up some Mercier Orchard's brews last week. The blackberry cider is awesome. Love to hear that. People enjoying Mercier Orchard's hard cider. It's one of those things. We wanted to tell that great story of a Georgia-grown company that's, boy, doing some great things. It seems like people are having a really good time with that right now. I love to see it. I also love to see those lousy, stinking Gators in their misery right now. We're on our way to New Orleans. We'll take a quick stop to remind them it's been 1,878 days since Florida's beaten Georgia, and we don't think John Summerall is going to do anything to change that. It's our Gator Hater Updater. Next time I speak to you, it'll be from New Orleans. We're inching closer to the Sugar Bowl. Gigantic show tomorrow. It's Media Day. We'll hear from Georgia coaches, Georgia players live on the show. It'll be madness. It'll be chaos. Our producer, Jay Black, will be nervous the entire time. But somehow, some way, it'll all come together. We'll see you for DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We'll see you from New Orleans tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cooldown. R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. And to our R.S. Andrews Cooldown viewers, hope you had a great Christmas. Glad to be back with you today. Sorry it's not live commentary. We told you last week we weren't quite so sure what we were going to do on Monday. This is just the best option we have. Knocking this thing out early. Presenting it to you today, then from New Orleans tomorrow. We're going to be a little catch as catch can with some of these shows, all live, obviously, throughout the week. But in terms of what the cool down is going to look like, boy, that's a little tricky. I think a lot of that is TBD, to be honest. TBD, TBH. So we will see about all of that. But I appreciate you being with us, and I'll look forward to being a part of as much chat as we can do. And hopefully you guys are chatting with each other. And more importantly, hopefully you're getting your game face on and getting ready for a big one against Ole Miss on Thursday. The Rebels, they're ready for it, but we are ready for it too. So let me say goodbye to you now. Check out RS Andrews online, rsandrews.com. Going to be cold again. That means it's time for you to get your heating system ready to go for the winter that's on its way. Because trust me, don't let the Christmas weather fool you. It's going to be winter here soon enough. It'll stay winter longer than you want it to. So get your heating system tuned up to factory fresh specs online, rsandrews.com. That is rsandrews.com. Have a great day. We're back tomorrow from New Orleans. It'll be crazy. Some of the times may be slightly different here and there. It's just going to kind of be a little bit of a mess. But the point is, it's not going to be less. It's going to be more. And it's going to be so much fun and so high energy. Beautiful scenery all around us. Great experience to bring the pageantry to you. If you can't be there yourself, hopefully the next best thing for you is engaging with us. And we'll have some great stuff for you all week long. So have a great day. Back tomorrow from New Orleans, DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We'll look forward to seeing you then.